good afternoon and welcome to today's OmniPro UK CPD webinar. I'm Dermot Hamblin, so I'm helping Des and the team at OmniPro launch OmniPro into the UK. So I may well have met a few of you before, as I've been working with accountants for the last 25 years. In terms of today, we've got actually a good friend of mine, Simon Britton, who's going to be helping us to discuss R&D cases. You may be able to notice that myself and Simon are wearing the same polo shirt, and that's actually because around about 13 months ago, Simon talked me into doing the coast-to-coast cycle, which is a cycle ride from Workington on the west coast all the way across to Sunderland on the east coast, which is about 132 miles. It was pretty easy for Simon because he's a regular cyclist. In terms of myself, I hadn't cycled since I'd left school, which you can probably work out is some considerable time ago. So I was absolutely wrecked at the end of that enjoyable weekend. So, but despite that, we're still talking. And so I'm pleased that Simon has got many years delivering R&D. He's actually been delivering R&D since the whole schemes were set up. He's got an interesting background because he's actually worked both for some large accountancy firms and some of the biggest legal firms in the UK. So I'll allow Simon to introduce himself in a few moments' time. Before I hand over to Simon, I just would like to confirm the fact that, or explain to you all that OmniPro, who are OmniPro? So OmniPro is a business that's been helping accountants create outstanding businesses for themselves in Ireland for the last 18 years. Started this year, we started moving into the UK. And you won't be surprised that COVID actually changed our plans somewhat. So we have been running these webinars since about May time, just to build some awareness of the business. So in terms of what OmniPro actually do, we help accountants build outstanding businesses by giving them some technical resource and getting them ready for technical visits. We deliver these CPD webinars, and we also have some online full-day festivals, and then we also offer practice management and some marketing advice. So if you want any information on OmniPro, then please feel free to contact me either through chat during today's session, or I'm available on LinkedIn afterwards. So also just a quick point, we've got our colleague Patrick, who's helping us out in the background. So we won't be emailing any notes at the end of this session, but we will be putting them up during the chat function during the course of the session. So please download any of the notes that you want while Simon is talking. We do hope that this is going to be an engaging session and that you'll have some questions. So if you do want to pose Simon any questions, any poses that you've got, then please use the Q&A function, and we'll endeavour to answer those during the next 60 minutes. So that's enough of me. I shall now hand over to Simon. Simon, the floor's yours.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dermot. That was yeah, really useful introduction. Thanks very much. And I'm just thinking that sorry, yeah, I'm trying to bring up the slides, and I've just clicked the wrong thing. Right, I'm back, concentrating again. Dermot, I thought you did really well on that coast-to-coast bike ride. It was a pleasure to do it with you. Two days of torture, but I can't think of anyone I'd like to be tortured with any more than you. It was fun, and you rode heroically. it's given that you hadn't been on a bike for so long, to actually commit and then persevere over the whole journey, I was blown away by. So thanks again, well done. And if anyone that is on the webinar today fancies supporting an excellent charity, then please do give either me or Dermot a shout, and there'll be lots of other opportunities to do the coast to coast as well. But yeah, let's excuse me. I want to tell you a little bit of my background, just to sort of give you some confidence that I know what I'm talking about today. So I've worked, as Dermot said, for some of the big accountancy firms, law firms, some of the more regional ones as well. And for the last few years, I've been the founder of Quantified Tax, which is an R&D tax consultancy. And Quantify has been delivering R&D tax advice through both the traditional route of face-to-face consultancy for several years, but over the last couple of years, we've been developing a software platform that allows clients to take a lead on putting the claims together. And that's really something which, as we go through today's talk, I'll shamelessly point out how relevant that is in the context of putting together a really good R&D claim. I have prepared a bunch of slides, which I will just bring up just now, and oh, no, these are your slides as well, Derek. So let's flick through these. I'm going to apologize at the outset, because although we're talking about the essential elements of R&D claims, I'm going to go a little bit off what I'd planned to do on the slides, because there's been a case that was published today that is the first sort of really substantial, meaty case about R&D claims, and so I just want to talk through that, because it really confirms a lot of the points that I'll be covering in the slides. But the company that had made this claim has had an absolute kicking in tribunal, and it really is sort of a lesson that those of us that are preparing R&D claims need to be aware of. But let's just jump in. The plan with this talk is I'm going to cover things at a pretty high level. If you want to drill into detail on any particular point, then please do just flag it up through the chat box, and we can do that. But otherwise, we'll just go through it, touching on kind of the core aspects of the claim and why they're important. So yeah. In terms of my background, I actually, because of my mixed accountancy and legal background, I actually handle quite a lot of R&D inquiries. Most people that will say, oh, we've never had a claim knocked back, and we haven't got much experience of R&D inquiries. I've got a lot of that experience because I work for so many different accountancy firms that refer work to me. And a lot of people that end up doing a claim themselves find that they're a little bit out of their depth when an inquiry comes along, particularly if it does look as if the revenue are resisting. And so I get involved to kind of bring the legal skill set into defending claims. So a lot of what I'm sharing today is experience that other people haven't really got in this area. I think Quantify has a disproportionately large amount of inquiries experience, but that's because
Hello. Excuse us, everybody. Simon seems to have frozen at this moment in time for some reason. You're now on mute, Simon. Simon, you're on mute.
How's that?
You're back.
Am I back?
Yeah, you did freeze there for a second.
Sorry about that. Right. Are the slides still up? Oh, damn it! I've lost you.
Yeah, I can't see the slides, so if you could share those slides again on screen, that would be great.
Yep, super duper.
Thank you.
Great. Here we go. Right. Excellent. So sorry about that. But yeah, just touching on what's the point of an R&D claim. For a client company that makes a claim, they're going to get back part of the costs of their business that they've spent on relevant qualifying innovation. So if it's an SME business, then if it's a profit-making one, they're going to get back about 25% of their relevant costs. A loss-making company will get back about a third of their relevant costs. If it's a large company that's making a claim, or an SME that's treated as a large company for particular projects, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later, then they get back about 10% of their qualifying costs. And qualifying costs are salaries, subcontractor costs, materials that have been used in the process. You've also got, excuse me, this is an element of software costs, light and heat, that sort of thing. So, but the bulk of any claim is usually made up of salary costs, and so this can be seen as a subsidy towards those costs. But let's move into the next slide. Yeah, this is something that that I want to flag up. Just because some have gone that way doesn't make it safe for the rest of us. I've littered the slide deck with pictures of bikes because I really like riding my bike, as Dermot touched on earlier. So so apologies for that, but this visual metaphor is like, don't always think it's safe just because someone else has gone that way. There might be a train coming. A lot of people have been making R&D claims for several years now, and then not having very much experience of inquiries or revenue pushback on schemes, because the revenue just haven't been policing this particularly hard, and it's led to a false sense of confidence in the claims that can be made. People have become complacent, and a lot of highly experienced advisors are making claims that in my experience of reviewing these things, include elements of cost that shouldn't be claimed, include projects that shouldn't be claimed. As an industry, R&D claims have become really sloppy, and the revenue are rightly now starting to crack down an awful lot harder on this. Although they are processing claims a lot faster through the corona problems and trying to get money moving in the economy again, that's great. But please do expect to see a lot more inquiries as we come out of this over the next sort of 6 to 9 months. And the lesson is that, particularly from the case that came out today, is that you need a really high standard of evidence to substantiate your claim, otherwise you're in bother. So let's touch on that a little bit more. Number one lesson of doing R&D claims: submit a report. If you haven't got a report, you're asking for trouble. And make it a report that the client has seen and approved. It seems obvious, but I've got to throw it in there. There are R&D providers out there that don't let the client see the report and claim that it's their intellectual property. And there are others that don't actually submit a report, and so you're asking the revenue to give you a big tax break on the basis of no evidence, no proof, and that's always going to push you into a high risk category. If ever the revenue challenge the claim and they ask the client, hey, what was the basis of the claim? If the client says, I don't know, I didn't see the report, then you're on hiding to nothing. So this is, yeah, this is kind of just a basic building block. Just submit a report every time. And we'll talk a bit more about the 3 elements of getting that report right through the next section. So the first and most important key element of getting a good report for an R&D claim is clarity. And by clarity, I mean, don't leave any doubt about how the report has been put together. Make it really obvious. Do the work for the inspector that's going to be reviewing the claim. Make it easy for him. Show your workings. Make it obvious that you've applied the rules. Don't just write a number down. You know, show how you've calculated things. Show how the qualifying cost has been built up, and then show that you've multiplied the qualifying cost by 130%, and then show how that enhanced tax deduction feeds into the tax that's payable. It seems obvious to you know, set it out in that way, but a lot of people skip a couple of steps, and when they do, then you're asking the inspector to trust you, and to trust that you've actually followed the process properly, got the computation right, and you're asking too much. Just show your workings. Clear project descriptions. This is so important. So many people write really long and rambling project descriptions that talk a lot about superfluous things. Let's just have really clear, short project descriptions. Show only the things that affect the value of the claim. The revenue inspectors do not want to read about the history of the company. They don't want to read 20 pages of stuff about the industry. They don't want CVs of the people that are in the management team. So scrap all of that. Just put down a really clear project description.
Simon, we've got a question has come in from one of the attendees. So we'll ask it while it's relevant. So one such R&D claim, we just lost the slides again, Simon. So if you could get those back up while I ask you this question.
Yeah.
So Brendan, who's one of the attendees, has had a R&D claim made for one of his clients, but it's been submitted by a specialist R&D firm. And that R&D external agency didn't allow Brendan and his team to see the claim before it went in. So any suggestions that you've got there?
My practice over dealing with a huge range of accountancy firms for many years on this is to always share the R&D claim with the excuse me, with the accountant. Although R&D providers can submit them separately, then you end up out of sync. So the accountant has numbers that they think are the correct ones with the revenue, and the revenue's got a different set, and it just doesn't work amazingly. I would challenge any R&D provider that's not willing to share their report. I would say, we're not willing to submit this without, at least being able to give it a cursory look over. A lot of R&D providers are reluctant to share on the basis that they think you're going to nick their templates, but really there's nothing that, there's no intellectual property in an R&D claim. You're reflecting what the client has done, and you present it in the way that follows the revenue guidance. So yeah, and for me, it raises a huge element of suspicion if the provider isn't happy to let you at least read the report. Sign a non-disclosure agreement if you have to, that sort of thing. But yeah, if they're not willing to share it, ask the client for it, because the client should certainly have seen it, and definitely don't submit a claim that the client isn't 100% confident about having read and approved in detail.
So in that situation, who should the HMRC be dealing with as the client's agent? Should it be the accountant, or should it be the specialist R&D agency?
I've always taken the approach that the accountant should be the agent that handles all of the tax affairs of the client. Make HMRC aware that there has been a third-party provider that's been involved in putting together some of the figures on the tax return, but the accountant still acts as the funnel, the gatekeeper to any inquiries. It's really important for the accountant to be fully abreast of anything that's happening on their client's corporation tax affairs. So if there is a detailed inquiry that might have knock-on effects into carried forward and brought forward figures, you need to be aware of that. And you don't necessarily need to be, the one that's preparing the replies to the revenue, but I'd certainly say to the R&D provider, can you draft a reply that you send to me, and then I'll send it on. And that way, yeah, it is a little bit of extra work, but the R&D provider shouldn't be doing anything on behalf of your client that they regard as so secret or special that they can't be open with you about it. Yeah.
So I suppose the key point here is that you have been acting with you yourself have been acting with a whole range of accounting practices all across the UK for the last 7 or 8 years that I've known you, and that therefore you're very happy to act with, and I would say it'd be very challenging for you as the R&D provider not to act with the accountant to actually provide an accurate claim. So if anybody does want to have a chat with you after this, then feel free to contact Simon.
Please do, yeah. Another excuse me, another point that goes into clarity here is the client company an SME or a large company? It's the claim that you're putting together an SME claim or an RDEC claim, and that goes down to the size of company that you're dealing with. It's got more than 500 employees. Does it meet the turnover or balance sheet requirements? if it is if it's a large company, then all of its projects are going to be treated as being RDEC projects. But you can have an SME that receives some grant funding or receives some payment by a large company for some R&D work that is carried out on a project. And that would mean that although it's an SME company, one or two of its projects could be RDEC qualifying projects. So you get a lower level of benefit on those. But it is important when you're setting this out to the revenue, just show that you've thought about that, and that and to explain on what basis you're treating it as an SME claim, or for individual projects, you know, why is that an RDEC project? Just don't go into detail on the company's history, but show that you have thought about the points that affect the value of the claim. Excuse me. What is the advantage that was sought? So it's got to be a scientific or a technological advance, and that is, you know, dealing with an uncertainty. Don't go into detail on the commercial challenges. Not only do the revenue not care, but if you dwell too long on the commercial challenges, it kind of dilutes the clarity that you've got on the technological or scientific advance that's being sought. And so this was something in the case that came out today. This is something that they really dwelt upon. The advance element of a claim is something that needs to be really well articulated, and it's not enough to stumble across an advance. You have to be aiming to achieve that advance. You have to put together a project with a plan, and the plan has to include achieving this advance. And so yeah, actually, I think if I can, I'll just talk through. I just want to quote a little bit of what came out in the tribunal. Excuse me. This was in the tribunal judgment that came out today. So apologies if this sounds a bit boring. I'm going to read verbatim for a little bit. So yeah, this is an example that was given. If a taxpayer were to build a bridge, each bridge is unique in terms of considerations such as height, span, load bearing, and environmental uncertainties such as winds. However, environmental uncertainties are not uncertainties in a technical sphere. In considering the type of bridge to build, existing technology is used. A prototype might be built to check the features, but this does not amount to R&D. Even if the bridge was larger than any other and had a greater load-bearing capacity than others, it wouldn't necessarily amount to an advance in technology, nor overcoming a scientific or technological uncertainty. So the construction of a bridge to order would not qualify for R&D relief. And that's, yeah, so just because you're making something bigger, stronger, that's not in itself an advance. So this is something that we do need to really make clear that we've considered when putting together an R&D report. When you're describing the advance, which is, you know, to overcome a scientific or technological uncertainty, set out, is this a scientific problem or a technological problem that we're looking at? If there's, you know, if it's vague, if the inspector can't tell which of those two it is when they're reading the report, then, you know, that's something that shows that you might not have understood the rules properly, and so you know, you're more likely to get a robust challenge. But being really clear, is this sort of almost an academic project that you've carried out, or is this an application of science in the real world? Which is it? And let's set that out.
So Simon, we had another question coming in from Sanj. So thank you, Sanj. And that's really, what do you do when HMRC challenges a claim which has been submitted by a external third party for R&D, obviously, you know, without the knowledge of the accountant, or even, well, without the knowledge of the accountant is one thing, but disclosure by client is obviously another level. So two aspects to that question. Thank you, Sanj. So
in those circumstances, you know, if you get an inquiry letter from the revenue, and that is likely to come to use the accountant, whether or not the R&D provider has separately sent in an authority letter. Often the revenues processes in terms of who they're going to speak to are a bit confused. You know, you'll have a 64.8 in place, and the R&D provider, unless they've put 64.8 in place, which is then just going to disturb, you know, your authority as an agent, usually put together a kind of limited scope authority to deal with the revenue on R&D matters, but that often just gets sort of chucked in a file and forgotten about. So if there is going to be a CT inquiry, particularly if R&D is just one element of that inquiry, then often the questions will just come direct to the accountant. So you can end up, Sanj, as you say, so you're being asked to deal with an R&D inquiry that you know nothing about. On that basis, you get straight in touch with the client and say, "What's this about? I need chapter and verse. Send me everything that relates to this, so that you've at least got it on file." I'd then say, you know, don't sort of take that and try and answer the inquiries yourself. Go to the provider and ask them, say, okay, we've had these questions in, can you answer them? And it's a mark of the strength of the provider whether they will actually answer those questions in detail or not. A lot of people give you a kind of, you know, a dismissive reply saying, oh, it's all covered in the report. Others will give you a, you know, considered and detailed reply to send on to the revenue, and others still will just say it's all right, we'll just deal with the revenue on that. If they say that, then ask to be copied in. You know, it's important that you understand the progress of the inquiry as it's dealt with. But yeah, if you find that you've got an R&D provider who isn't giving you adequate comfort that they're dealing with the questions properly, or worse, that they just say, you know, we're not dealing with that, which does sometimes happen, then yeah, that's something where you're going to need to have copies of what the revenue have seen. You need to have that in front of you, and then you need to just sit with the client and say, what's what, how's this come about, and answer the questions in a detailed and thorough way. You know, I've always found that the best approach to fending off inquiries is to answer the revenues questions before they've been asked. Send in that report, make sure that the report is clear and works its way through the revenues checklist, so that when the report lands in front of an inspector, they can look at it and be really happy that they've got a qualifying claim in front of them. And that way, you know, they've got a pile of other ones to make inquiries into, and they do it on a risk factor basis. So if yours looks as if it's a qualifying claim at first glance, don't worry, there'll be another 10 that do not have the same level of confidence. And so the inspector's likely to pick one of those before inquiring into yours. But if you do find that you are in an uncomfortable position on answering revenue inquiries, and it's something that you know you haven't been involved in preparing, then yeah, reach out. It is one of the services that at Quantify we provide is to help deal with the revenue on these things, and we do it on a basis of, you know, open and honest. Okay, this is the claim that's being made. You haven't got enough detail to be comfortable with that at the moment. What do you need to become comfortable, Mr. Inspector? And then we put that together and present it to him in a clear and coherent way. And yeah, very often come to the right conclusion. If something is completely indefensible, then yeah, that's something that we'll just say right at the outset that you need to have a you know, proper sit-down chat with the inspector about this, because you know you're on hiding nothing. And unfortunately, that's a conversation that we're having to have with more and more people that have used providers that have just not done the job properly. There's a lot of kind of hit and hope claims going in by people, made even worse if it's kind of, we're going to submit a number with basically no backup, but can you please buy this insurance, fees insurance at the same time, and this, you know, attitude that the work to support the claim will be done when it's covered by the fee insurance, inquiry fee insurance, and that's a terrible approach. So if you find yourself in that position, then yeah, reach out and then we'll share the experience that we've got around how to deal with it.
and thank you for that. One other question which has just come in, Simon, from Jalith. and that is, can you just confirm the tribunal case that you were referring to, the one that's was just released this morning?
Yes, it's called Haiti Engineering, and it was published on the 10th of October.
How do you spell Hades? Sorry.
Oh, hang on, I don't want to get this wrong. It is. Sorry, give me just a brief second. Here it is. Okay, it's HADEE Engineering Company Limited against HMRC.
Okay,
And
super.
And yeah, the claimant company hasn't yet asked for leave to appeal against that. But it's something that given the decision that's been made and quite how thoroughly they've been ripped apart in tribunal, it would be I'd be surprised if they wanted to take that very much further. Not a case I've had anything to do with, just a case that was published today. So I've had a look through it. It is a really enlightening read. There's 60 odd pages of it, but I'd recommend anyone that's putting R&D claims together at the moment to have a good read of that one. I'll put a link to it on my LinkedIn profile later on in case anyone wants to pick it up there. But yeah, in that case, they'd actually used an external third-party R&D provider, and the clearly very competent and pretty innovative company that was involved basically didn't bother answering the revenues inquiries. They said, look, we've used this third-party professional provider to put the claim together for us. Just ask them. And the provider washed their hands of it and didn't answer the questions. So there was a fairly dim view taken of all that. But yeah, one of the points that the tribunal judgment talks about, which let me just quote again from the decision. The decision said the appellant's reliance on the third-party provider is misplaced, as it's stated in the contract, which is the engagement letter. It's stated in the contract and confirmed in correspondence that they did not verify the information or carry out any type of audit trail, and that's standard in most engagement letters that I've ever seen from R&D providers. And a lot of just normal engagement letters from accountancy firms. You say we're relying on the detail that you've given us. We're relying on the information provided by you, Mr. Client, and we haven't checked it. And so if there are any errors in this, it's on you. But the revenue and the tribunal really picked up on this, and they said, well, okay, the burden of proof is on you, Mr. Client. You can't pass that off to someone else, particularly given that they've written in their report that they're not accepting responsibility for that. So the client was expected to be able to prove all of the figures in their claim and prove the uncertainties, and they didn't adequately do that. Just looking back at the slides, how was the uncertainty tackled? Again, make a brief summary of what was actually done, who did what and when. When is crucial, but don't go into detail on the commercial challenges. I'm going to keep banging that point home. The revenue don't want to hear about the commercial challenges. They want to know who did what. Did you do some research? Did you do some prototyping? Did you take it out into the real world and test it? Did you set it on fire? Did you bash it until it fell apart? Who did what? But don't talk about why it's marketable and why there's a gap in the market. That's not something that gets you anywhere. And then there's the obviousness test as well. So this is the test of would the approach to the uncertainty be readily ascertainable to a competent professional in the field? That's a long-winded way of saying it's an obviousness test. If the problem that you've looked at has an obvious answer, if you could Google it, if you could find it in an internet forum, if you could pick it up from a textbook, or if it's something that's covered on a university degree in this area, then please don't stick it in an R&D claim. There needs to be something that actually requires quite a lot of thought from people who are used to thinking about these things. And I often refer back to this one as just a rule of thumb. If it didn't take very long to actually solve the uncertainties that the client was looking at, then it's not going to get over this obviousness test. And also, you know, if it didn't take long, then the claim's not going to be worth very much, because there's not going to be much in the way of salaries that are allocated to it. If it did take a long time, then yeah, the answer probably wasn't obvious. But you do need to also set out some logic around why you think this obviousness test has been passed. And just somebody internally in the company saying, that was a bit hard, that's not enough. You need to do some extra work to validate that. And again, don't go into detail on the commercial challenges. The revenue do not want to hear that, and the commercial challenges dilute from the message about why the claim is qualifying. Confidence is key. Show what you've not claimed as well as what you've claimed, and use the right language. If the revenue inspector that sits and looks at your claim report for a very brief amount of time, these guys have not got a lot of time to look at claim reports. If they can look at it and then think, yeah, that looks right, I'm confident that the person that's put that claim together knows the rules and has applied them correctly, then you know the momentum is with you. If they look at it and they think, oh, I don't know about that, gonna have to do some work here to make sure that that's right, then you know, you're pedaling in the wrong way. Show that you know where the line is. Show that you've thought about what can and can't be claimed. Yeah, show them, you know, what have we claimed, and then what have we excluded from the claim. And it can just be sort of, you know, a list of things that are reasonably obvious that you've excluded, but you need to show where the cutoff points of the R&D qualifying activities are, and where things have you know, crept more into being a commercial activity, a marketing activity, or something like that, fundraising or a regulatory requirement, something like that. So so show where the cutoff points are. And a timeline is excellent for this. You can often show, okay, we had an intense period of research-based stuff, then we built some prototypes, then we sort of took it out in the market, learned what we could. So that was non-qualifying. We then came back with some fresh questions around, well, what can we do? How can we improve this, that, the other? And some of those will be technological uncertainties, and some will just be commercial. So show that you've streamed those and split them out, but demonstrate to the revenue that you know where that line is. Otherwise, the revenue are going to be uncertain and lack confidence in your claim. Certainty as well. Certainty is the final, it's the third of the three key elements. And certainty is all about showing that you're not guessing at the numbers that are in your claim. Evidence, not assumptions. Show that your claim isn't based on percentages. It's not based on guesswork. And this is something that again, it was really reinforced in this case that I've mentioned a couple of times. In that case, the report that went into the revenue had a list of staff with their salaries and percentages and you know, proportions that had been claimed, and the tribunal was at pains to point out that that's not good enough. Yes, it's the way that a lot of people have put R&D claims together for a lot of years, and very often it's, you know, it's the only sort of reasonable way that you can approach these things. But if it gets tested, then just a guess, you know, 25% of that person's time, 50% of that person's time, it's not good enough. You have to have evidence, and assumptions don't provide strong enough evidence around that. So the revenue will work with you on a practical level, and they will ask you, you know, what sort of evidence have you got? If you've got nothing, then you're on hiding nothing. Timesheets, you know, don't fit into the actual practical life of a lot of businesses, and so timesheets are kind of often maybe more than can be reasonably expected to have been kept. And so sometimes your assumptions are a good way of just bridging a gap for the first claim that a company made. If they didn't know about R&D, They didn't realize that you had to keep proper records. So the revenue will give you a little bit of leeway on the first claim, maybe the first 2 claims. But if you're repeatedly banging in claims for, 10, 20, 50, 100,000 pound, then the revenue will quite rightly expect you to keep some proper records around it. And if it's not timesheets, better be something pretty close to timesheets. Also, invoices, keep the invoices. The number of R&D inquiries where the revenue save, you got some evidence about the materials that have been claimed, and you go back to the company that has put this claim together and say, where's your evidence that cost was actually incurred at the right time to be part of this claim, and that it wasn't something that involves non-qualifying elements, and people can't find invoices. I mean, that's worrying, isn't it? So yeah, let's just make sure that we have actually done the work to test the figures that are going into the revenue. The revenue have repeatedly been taking a sort of slightly off-center approach to R&D inquiries, and rather than just asking about, hey, what was the innovation that went on, they're asking, for the last 6 years, you should have kept records that support every figure on your tax return. So show me the records that support these figures for each of the last 6 years. And that's something that can really cause problems if claims have been put together on the back of a fact packet, which does seem to be the case with a lot of providers. Things change fast. Time stamping projects lets you show what was and wasn't standard practice at the time. When you're looking at innovation, you're at the cutting edge of something, and the cutting edge moves very fast. What's cutting edge today will be standard practice in 6 months' time, 9 months' time, a year's time. And this is often the challenge in putting together an R&D claim, is that you're asking a client, generally sort of 6 months after year end, hey, what did you do last year, or possibly even the year before, that was difficult or clever? And if the client hasn't kept proper records to support that at the time and could just pull them out, then actually they're going to forget what was difficult, because what was difficult, in January will either have been sort of, so difficult that it's not been resolved and they've moved on and forgotten about it by June, or it's going to be something where they've solved the problem and then they're out marketing it, and come June, it's no longer perceived as being as difficult as it was back in January. So you need to have the client putting together records at the time that it's difficult. Hindsight does not help with an R&D claim. And also when you're time stamping projects, it's useful if the revenue do want to say, what was what was difficult about this project. It's useful to be able to refer to what was what was the state of the art at the time, what was going on in forums of people that are in this industry that are talking to each other. If it's something where people are saying, hey, I'm really struggling with X, and you can show, you can refer back to that sort of thing and say, this was an acknowledged area of uncertainty in the industry in January, and so we're claiming time from January. Then that's great. But actually, if you put together a claim that says, well, we were using emerging technology at some point during 2018, then the revenue are going to lack confidence, lack certainty and clarity in the claim. Yeah, R&D tax relief, it's not rocket science. I said I was going to include lots of pictures of bikes. This is a picture of someone using the Quantify software. This is another thing that I like. So that's why there's a picture of it. But the Quantify R&D software platform is a tool that clients use, integrates with Xero. It's a sort of real-time shared screen with accountants. You can dip in and out of it through the course of the year and see what the clients are logging in terms of projects. So this is a tool that lets clients set up projects as they are, as they emerge, as the uncertainty is fresh. And you can build up the narrative over the course of the year. It lets clients, lets their staff tag time to those projects through the course of the year. So if the revenue asks the question, hey, where did your numbers come from? Then you can say that we specifically recorded time in this R&D tracking software. The software at the year end will produce a report showing you the computations, and it presents everything in the format that the revenue want to see. So yeah, it's the rules aren't that difficult, and presentationally it's not that difficult, but just making sure that you're organized and that you're capturing everything and that you're presenting everything in a really clear, coherent way. Yeah, it's not rocket science. Just use the right tools, and the Quantify platform, which is on quantify.tax, will give you a big hand in doing that. And it also puts the client in the driving seat. And this is something that the revenue have been asking about, who led the claim process, and they want to see that it was a client that was in the driving seat there, and that they've not been spoon-fed by an advisor.
Just a quick question
yeah.
that's come in, Simon. Very topical one from Tanvir, so thank you very much, Tanvir. So the question is, if our clients have utilised the coronavirus grant funding, whether that's a CBILS, a bank's back loan, or a job retention scheme, could this affect their ability to make an R&D claim?
That is a cracking question, and you have preempted the next blog post that I've just written. So it's a question that a lot of people have got at the moment. Yeah, there are some of the state aid grants which would affect the rate of claim. The problem with that is that it taints that entire project. If you've had grant funding, it taints your project, not your entire claim, just that project, but you need to then just claim RDEC, which is this lower rate of R&D benefit on the entire life of that project, not just the year that you received the grant. So that only applies to the ones that count as a notified state aid, because you're not allowed to overlap state aids. We'll see what happens next year when we sort of, when Brexit's fully happened. There might be some tweaks to the rules around that. But at the moment, that's not really something that's getting talked about very much. With the grants that apply generally to the company, then that doesn't affect the rate of claim that you've got. So if it's money that's just coming in to kind of prop up everything, the working capital of the business, propping up everything the business does. So a lot of people have kind of had just £10,000 drop in because they paid business rates. And so with that, it doesn't specifically relate to any R&D project, therefore doesn't affect the rate of claim, and that's fine. The revenue have actually been in touch with a lot of people. Chartered Institute published the note that came out, but they said, look, we're not looking to hurt people here. If the rules are the rules. You can't overlap your state aids, and therefore, if you have received state funding towards a particular project, then you have to claim RDEC on it. But if it's more general, then we're not going to ask you to kind of pro-rata, right? We're not going to knock all your projects onto RDEC where there would have otherwise been an SME claim. The one to watch, which a few people have kind of been oblivious to, is furlough. If you've furloughed your staff, you can't then claim that they were active on an R&D project. If you do that, expect to get a kicking by the revenue when they pick up on it, and that is something that the revenue are looking at. They are trying to just marry these things up. So yeah, be really aware of that one. The other point to note on that as well is that if you've got a company that is 100% R&D, and you've had any sort of grant, any sort of CBILS funding or anything like that, it wouldn't be possible to argue that funding hasn't gone against the R&D activity, and on that basis, yeah, you should really just claim RDEC for that year. So yeah, one to watch, but generally, the types of funding that have been coming out, particularly the soft loans, won't affect your R&D claim for an SME company.
Thank you.
Great. So yeah, there's qualifying costs, non-qualifying costs. I don't want to dwell too much on those. Hopefully this is something that as you work through putting together an R&D claim, these will all be familiar terms. Hosting, I just want to emphasize, hosting is not something that the revenue currently accept as being an R&D qualifying cost. Advertising is not something that you can claim. Capital costs, don't claim them as part of the R&D uplift on revenue expenditure. If you've got capitalized software development, then capitalized software development is something that you can, in some circumstances, pull into your SME claim. But again, just be ultra cautious. If you are doing that, you make it really clear to the revenue how you've done it, and then be consistent in years going forward by adding back the deduction that you know, the amortization of those capitalized costs, because you've already had tax deduction on that. But it's best if you are planning on trying to bring any sort of software development into your R&D claim, then if you can, stick it on the P&L. If you can't, then question whether or not you really should be claiming the R&D claim on it. Cool. So, oh, I think we've lost the ability. Flick on the next slide. No, I've got it. Great. This is one of my favorite slides. Things that are often overlooked. So yeah, as I say, I do a lot of kind of review of other people's claims, as well as putting together kind of a lot of claims myself. And so these are probably my top 3 things that are missed when people put claims together. Proof of concept work for potential customers. A lot of people are, particularly in engineering, manufacturing, are asked to tender for work and to, you know, to come up with designs or to prove capability for something where there is a feasibility question. You know, can this be done? A potential customer might come along and say, if you can do this, then we'll give you some work. And so people spend a lot of time and cost, you know, proving that something is feasible, and that's something that often gets overlooked when people only look at you know, successful work or work that's been won. Paid for work that forms part of a large company's R&D project. We touched on that earlier. That would be an RDEC claim for an SME. And so that's something that over the last couple of years, people have been much better at spotting that. But for many, many years, there were very few SMEs that ever made that particular type of claim just because it was overlooked. And indirect activities that support the R&D process. Like, yes, your claim should be primarily focused on the direct activities, but there are, you know, there's a swathe of indirect costs that support the R&D process that should also be brought in. But if you are bringing them in, make it very clear in the report what they are and why you've brought them in, and refer back to the revenue guidance. Yeah, as I mentioned before, who led the claim process is a question that comes up a lot now when the revenue are making inquiries into claims. They are very suspicious of certain claim providers, where a lot of the claims that go in, narratives all look the same. And so they've been asking companies, hey, how much input did you have here? And if the client company says, well, not that much, then yeah, you're going to get ripped to shreds. Make the claim, you know, do your preparation through the year. I think I mentioned this earlier, so I'll not dwell on this one now. But you have to have timely records, because hindsight isn't going to maximize the claim. And yeah, just to touch on it again, the tools that are needed to put these records together and to have really good, strong, credible evidence, the tools are out there on quantified.tax. So by putting the right tools in the right hands, get the client to lead on the work, and then the accountant in collaboration with an R&D provider can just make sure that everything's presented properly, that non-qualifying things are weeded out. But yeah, you really want the client to be in the driving seat of putting the claim together, and in terms of data gathering and providing all of that to you. Percentage, I'm not gonna bang on about percentage fees, but yeah, from a regulatory point of view and excuse me, from a kind of industry point of view, people that are charging success fees are really viewed in a dim light now. If you're saying to a client, look, there's a large element of risk involved in this claim, and therefore, you know, I'm only going to charge you if it's successful, that is no longer an acceptable way to deal with clients. You know, be confident that it's a qualifying claim and then charge a fair fee for it. That's the message there. So thanks from me. Those are my contact details. That's my website. So please do get in touch, either through the chat. I think we've got some time for questions, or get in touch sort of separately. But yeah,
I've got a question, Simon.
Yeah.
If we could just go back to one slide, please, Patrick, just so we finish with, thank you, Simon's contact details, so people can take those. And yeah, the Quantify Tax is an app which, you know, you're free to use. If you want to give it a try, then, you know, Simon's quite happy for you to download, set it up, and, you know, put a few cases through it, you know, especially those cases which have already been submitted. But I've got a kind of practical question for you, Simon. So I know through our dealings that you've, you know, submitted, you know, hundreds if not thousands of claims, ranging from everything from you know, pellets for pig food through to ice cream protein. You know, you even did one for a software company, which was you know, the engineering of a sales process online. But can you just talk to me about why the claim for luxury watches, why was that particular claim successful? If you can claim that we did, you know, what made that luxury watch actually suitable for an R&D claim?
It was such a sexy watch. I definitely wanted one, but they were massively out of my price range. So yeah, this is a really interesting one because the guts of the watch, similar to most luxury watches, is actually only a sort of a relatively low number of what they call the guts of the watch, the actual sort of mechanism inside, are all made by these artisanal hipsters in Switzerland who make these watches, and to an incredibly high standard. But a lot of that is the same, and any luxury watchmaker can pretty much buy the guts of a watch themselves from these guys that make them. And so when you then take sort of, you know, a mechanism and you put it in a case with you know, with a strap, and then with its own sort of, you know, the winding mechanism, the face, all these kind of different things, you're bespoking something that's got, you know, a core element that is bought in, and so you can't claim to have been involved in the innovation of the actual way that the watch works. But then when you're working on what the watch does, so the mechanism makes the parts move, and will be, you know, reliable, and you know, you tend not to sort of make that any more or less efficient or robust or anything like that. But actually, what appears on the face of the watch, that is something that you can make more or less reliable, and you can sort of build in different features. You can show the time and movement of the moon and movement of this, that, and the other in different ways. So there was a certain element of interesting activity that went on around that, but actually on the luxury watch claims that went in, that was more about the aesthetic of what the watch actually looked like, how it felt, how it sat on the wrist, and the sort of endurability of it. How do you get sort of elements within a watch to remain operational under different pressures and stresses? How can you increase the extent to which it operates under significant pressure underwater, that kind of thing? How do you get the appearance of the hands in contrast to the face of the watch? How do you get those to appear more clearly when there's a lot of glare on the actual what do you call it, the glass bit that sits on the front? There's a word for it, can't remember what that is. And so yeah, looking at the aesthetics and the kind of the optical qualities of the watch, all of this kind of thing can be, and you know, it's been proven to be the good qualifying activity. And that was something that got looked at in a lot of detail by the revenue, whose starting position was watches have been around for a while, haven't they? So what are you doing? And then when you explain to the revenue, well, actually, yeah, the guts of this watch is a bought-in standard thing, but this is what we're claiming on. Then yeah, it was something that took a little bit of to and fro with the inspector, but got there in the end. And then the revenue have subsequently looked at successive claims and said, yeah, happy with that. So a lot of it's about sort of just articulating what it is. If you just say, hey, we've spent some time innovating around watches, then yeah, you're gonna get some suspicion from the revenue, similar to the sports science claims that I've made, where the revenue inspectors pick it up and say, hang on, that's a football club. What are you on about? Football clubs don't do innovation. But then when you actually sort of unpick it and look into the sports science aspects of what's going on, and the level of academic knowledge that's coming out of some of these clubs, then yeah, that can be a real eye opener as well.
Excellent. Yeah, well, maybe we'll talk about the football clubs next time. So that's just about our 60 minutes. So thank you very much, Simon, for guiding us through the last 60 minutes and what makes a successful claim. Simon's details are on screen there. So just as he touched upon at the end of the luxury watch claim there, then part of Simon's service is not just putting the claim together, writing the claim, but he'll also engage with the inspectors at the revenue to make sure that they understand fully the reasons for the claim. And it's fair to say that some of his descriptions of the goods and services that he's been working on for the R&D claims have actually been much better than the actual suppliers themselves. So they've actually taken Simon's descriptions and started to use it in their own marketing. And again, if you want to have a play and test the app, then feel free to contact Simon. So that's it for today. We will be back on Thursday with another UK CPD. We've got Mike from our own team who's going to be talking through some audit processes. So we look forward to that. Please download the notes if you haven't already done so. We will be ending the webinar very, very shortly. And I should point out that if you do want to re-watch the recording of today's session, then all of the webinars do go up in the Facebook group. So that's Profit Pro Growth for Accountants UK. So please feel free to join us there. We've got a good little group of members, which is quite active and is quite active in between these webinars. So thank you, Patrick, for your help behind the scenes. That's much appreciated. Thank you, Simon, for a really engaging session. And thank you to all of the attendees. We value your time and attendance today. Look forward to seeing you all again shortly. Thank you very much.